Today we are in the offices of my friend, he's also my physician, Dr. Russell Cavallo, who is an orthopod. In our programs, we're constantly going to be bringing in physicians and trainers, strength and conditioning experts, and appropriate doctors to talk about appropriate mechanics and physiology, kinesiology as related to the things we're talking about as well. I know that you played baseball yourself in college. Can you just tell us a little bit about your background? You're an orthopod now, but you were an athlete in college and stuff.
Yeah, that's probably what got me into orthopedics, having an athletic background and interest in biology and medicine, and those things go very well together in sports medicine.
We're in an era where there's no excuse not to have proper information with some of this stuff. The idea of, okay, just throw the kids out there and throw the balls out there and whatever is inexcusable. Right now there's a lot of people that are objecting to some of the things that, for instance, Little League Baseball is doing, curveballs and pitch counts and things like this. And to me, there's no excuse for this kind of stance on things because there's just so much information. These organizations have access to the best people in every possible field to give information for this stuff.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, usually in sports medicine, we're fighting with the overzealous parent, the overzealous coach, almost more than the athlete in terms of preventing injuries.
I read something the other day that kids will get to a point where they actually will welcome an injury because they've just been burned out on the sport.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever seen a patient admit that, but sometimes, I'm thinking that I examine someone and there's really not that bad an injury to keep someone out, yet the child, the player, doesn't want to play, and I'm thinking that maybe they're getting pushed a little too hard.
Yeah, and it just is not. It's not fun. It's not fun. It's become a job. It becomes work.
Yeah, kids are playing multiple sports over the same time frame, and it's a huge commitment. And there's pressure. There's pressure that goes along with it.
I know that on a national level, I've read that there is something like a 300% increase in the last couple of years in shoulder and elbow injuries. Are you seeing any of that reflected in your own practice, or what are you seeing?
I certainly would say there's been an uptick. It's probably a regional thing too, depending on what sports are most popular in those regions. I'm sure there's a lot more shoulder and elbow injuries going on in the South, where they play baseball and overhead sports like that, all year round. Mm-hmm. Here, it's more of a seasonal thing. See a lot of it in the spring, the summer, especially towards the end of the summers.
One of the things I want to just get your confirmation, if nothing else, on today, because we're going to do more detailed things with Dr. Cavallo as we get into some of our programs, but that there are two issues relative to elbow and shoulder injury, and one is overuse. There's a lot of discussion right now about pitch counts and things like this, and the other thing is improper use. Are you seeing injuries relative to those two type of things?
Well, that's absolutely. I mean, that's the major reason they occur, and that's where the coaches come in.
Right.
You have to put the responsibility on them to limit the pitch counts and make sure that the techniques are right.
One of the things that we are enormously verbal, and not just verbal but loud about is looking for some certification program in baseball, because here you have a sport that's incredibly difficult, the hardest hand-eye game in the world, and it also involves the throwing, which, as I said, is enormously traumatic, and we have people that aren't qualified at all to teach it.
I think it goes beyond baseball. It's all sports. The problem is, you have to appreciate the people that are making the commitment to even be there. I think if you make it a little too hard, some of these people that are volunteering, they may not go that extra mile, but it would be a great thing, certainly, if people were certified.
The way I look at it is that it's a necessity. I always talk about the fact that, obviously no one would come in to see you without this thing, without the certification on the wall. And I don't think it's when you have a volunteer that is putting in, scores of hours with the team, I don't think it's a lot to ask to take a 4 to 6, 8 hour course to do it properly. I think that, somebody already knows that hourly obligation they're going to make. I don't think it's a lot. The people that are well motivated will certainly do it. And the people that have hidden agendas, the meism or my son's going to be a superstar, they will probably not buy into it.
I agree.
The other thing I wanted, so in addition to arm and, obviously shoulder, elbow, the other thing which applies to your practice is the spine. We're going to talk a lot in some of our programs with our strength and conditioning coaches about how balance plays such an important role in baseball and all sports. Are you seeing a lot with that with kids, or do you see any lower back injuries, that kind of thing?
It's certainly not as frequent as your middle-aged weekend warrior, but there are other conditions that like spondylolysis and things like that are more common in the adolescent.
Wow.
That's actually when you usually see it.
Well, one of the things that I talk about with people with arm injuries is I go, look, this is not like cutting a rope with a scissors or a knife. This is like a rope coming up apart, that there's improper use and overuse where it becomes like fraying. That's why teaching a proper mechanics, even something as simply as running, is appropriate, because it's not just performance inducing, it's injury prevention. Would you agree?
Yes, I mean, and basically what you described is a strain to a muscle or a tendon,
Right.
where they get pulled apart, or a sprain to a ligament. It's the same thing. I mean, that's these structures stretching or coming apart.
Right. And the last thing I wanted to get your opinion on, which everybody talks about arms, and nobody talks about these other areas with the kids, the spine. And and the last area I want to talk about is the knees and the hips.
There's a lot of factors that go into these muscle injuries. If you're standing around, if it's a cool night, then the muscle is not going to be as elastic, and it is at risk. Hydration is key, stretching is key, and fatigue. If it's at the end of a game, you're more vulnerable than at the beginning of a game if you're tired. So, there's a lot of factors that go into it, and, the athlete has to make sure that all those things are maximized.
Let's be honest, the athletes don't know at this age.
Not the younger ones, that's for sure.
Right, and this is where you've got to get responsible parents that will, rather than win the all darn game, to pull the plug when Johnny says, I'm sore, I'm tired, and the coach is tempted, and the parents are tempted to say, oh, give me one more inning, or do this or that or anything. It's always, when you're in doubt, always pull the plug.
Well, there's that's where I come in. That's where the healthcare worker comes in, and I have to be the bad guy and shut these kids down. Sometimes against the wishes of the parent, and usually against the wishes of the coach. But another very important factor that's taking root are athletic trainers. And a lot of high schools have athletic trainers now, and some don't. And I can't emphasize the importance of them enough, because they're the on-field guys. They're the ones talking and sitting with these athletes, seeing them before and after games. And they're the ones that can relay to the coaches and the parents and to me, as the sports medicine doctor, when someone can and can't play. And they have a big voice in things. So
That's great. I never thought about that from the use standpoint. It's a growing business,
yeah.
really an exploding business, and you're absolutely right. It just brings another professional voice into the
Traditionally,
into the
it's
equation.
a very overworked and underpaid field, and underappreciated.
It's not just, again, it's not just about enhancing performance. It's about injury prevention, and I can't emphasize enough that these are children. Their bodies are not fully developed. They go through dramatic changes yearly, There's enormous changes, not just with their height and their weight, but internally what's going on with their bodies.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anyway, we'll end on that.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And we'll be doing some more with Dr. Cavallo along the way.